Hello, it is I, Smart, and I gotta talk about that latest Mandalorian episode because it was really good. It was surprising. It was barely about Mando, but it was really, really good. I was not expecting the hour-long episode to be all about Dr. Pershing, but I really enjoyed it. We got to see a totally new side of Star Wars we haven't seen before, and I really enjoyed it. It honestly really reminded me of like an Andor episode, right? Andor, which was amazing, because I mean, it was based on Coruscant, but it was really more slow and character-driven, as opposed to The Mandalorian, which is usually just, big action, Grogu, Mando, flying in spaceship, blowing up stuff. We had that at the beginning of the episode, but then it just went right into this slow burn character story. It was so good. But amidst all these cool details in this episode, like the theater that, Anakin hears the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, yes, that theater. Pershing gave like a TED talk in there, that was kind of cool. And then there was, during this carnival scene, there was a bit of the Resistance theme.
Luke is trying their best, but they're struggling.
That's kind of cool. And also the one that it's a trap.
It was a trap.
That, funny, you get it? It's a trap, But anyway, there are all these cool references in this episode. But one thing that really stood out to me was I personally noticed a ton of similarities to 1984. Okay, now bear with me. Yes, I'm talking about the book and, the couple different movie adaptations of it. The book by George Orwell. Now, bear with me here. Right? I know the book of 1984 kind of has a meme status because basically any time the government does anything, there's some people who are like, oh, this is literally 1984. It's the government's evil. It's literally 1984. It's like, what the heck? Anyway, so it's kind of a meme as like anytime anything happens, it's like, this is so 1984. So a lot of people, I don't think they really understand what the book's actually about. I've actually read the book. I read it a couple years ago, and it's a pretty decent book. It's a really interesting read. And there's also a movie interpretation. I watched that more recently. So if you're not familiar, basically, this is a book from 1949, and the title of the book is literally just 1984, because it takes place in the future when he wrote this. Obviously, 1984 is in the past now. But George Orwell wrote this book, and it basically describes a guy who's living in this city where everything's dystopian, and the government controls every aspect of people's life, and they're always being observed. Now, you might be thinking, that doesn't really sound at all like this Mandalorian episode. Where the heck are you going with this, Iris Smart? Bear with me, alright? I will start to show some comparisons soon, because there is a surprisingly large amount. So yeah, 1984, it's a great book. It's all political and stuff, so I'm not going to get too much into what the actual book means. I'm specifically just going to be talking about some comparisons I noticed. So first of all, I don't know what it is, but Dr. Pershing really reminds me of Winston, which is the character from the book 1984. They're both kind of timid characters. They both have glasses. I mean, that's not like a huge connection that they both wear glasses. A ton of characters wear glasses. But there really aren't that many Star Wars characters that wear glasses. So, I mean, it could be a comparison, but I think that's a bit of a stretch. The main thing is just their kind of personalities. They're both kind of trying to fit into the society. They don't really fit into it that well. They're trying to fit in as best they can. And they want to follow the rules, but they're both kind of willing to bend things a little bit. So in both stories, our main character meets this female character who then, kind of shows them some different stuff, tells them like, oh, this is how the government's like, you can kind of get around them if you do this. And then they go off and do something. And, they're kind of, the guy character is kind of like resistant at first, but then they eventually go. And then it's this, action of kind of going behind the government's back that eventually leads to them getting caught. And then when they get caught, the main character is betrayed. And then this leads to him getting, thrown into a sort of prison where he's tortured and then maybe sort of killed. In both books, in both the book and the show, it's not really clear if he's killed. So that's another interesting comparison because the book kind of leaves it ambiguous. Some interpretations say it isn't ambiguous. I personally found it kind of ambiguous. But also in the show, it's kind of like, did they kill Pershing? Is he still alive? It's not really clear at the end. Now, this isn't a perfect comparison, I will admit. In the book, it's in the book 1984, it's Winston who meets this girl Julia, and then they get together, and it ends up being this other character named O'Brien who ends up giving up Winston and betraying him. But in the show, it's Kane that Pershing meets. There's a lot of names here. Kane and Pershing meet, and then it's Kane who betrays Pershing. So it's a bit different, but still, you can kind of see those similarities there. Also, another interesting thing is that in the book, it's shown that the party, which is the government force, is totally in control. They control everything. They know everything. You cannot fight them. Whereas in the show, the New Republic is shown to be pretty incompetent. They don't really know what they're doing. They're just kind of like, yeah, we're just going to turn on this machine. We don't really know what it does. Whereas the party is like, we are going to totally destroy your humanity, and you're not going to be the same person after this experience. So, very different, but you can still kind of draw comparisons. So thematically, overall, I would also say that these are entirely different stories. One is about, humanity and authoritarianism, and the other one is more just about Dr. Pershing and what he's trying to do with his research. But I still think you can make these comparisons. It becomes very obvious when you point them all out. And it became obvious to me just upon a first viewing. It really reminded me of it, with also some of these other details here. The housing for the amnesty program really reminded me of the really blocked, kind of commune housing of 1984. The blue outfits that they all wear in the amnesty program are like the blue jumpsuits that all the party members wear. Dr. Pershing works at a desk where he archives all this information that he can't, question or really know anything about. It's kept secret from him, but he still has to work at it, and he's being constantly observed. Again, very much like the way Winston works at his desk. In the show, there's a robot that asks Pershing how he feels about the government. Do you feel any sorts of anger to the New Republic and all that, which is kind of similar to the end scenes of 1984, where Winston is kind of tortured and he's being asked, "What do you think about this? What if the party says this? How would you feel about that?" It's not exactly the same. He's not being tortured. Pershing isn't being tortured, but still, it's similar. So yeah, the comparison isn't perfect, but I definitely think it's there. I'm not going crazy here. I'm definitely seeing there's a comparison here. If you've seen either the movie or read the book, I think you can kind of see where I'm going with this. My other thought, though, is I don't know if this is what the writers intended. Maybe they didn't intend. Maybe this is just a crazy coincidence. But I think it's definitely a possibility that the writers did mean to make these parallels. It also could be a reference to THX 1138, which is a George Lucas movie. I think this is a bit more likely, because that movie is very much inspired and kind of similar to 1984. So overall, yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. It was just really great. I hope you found these comparisons interesting. I didn't really know if there's really anything to this. I noticed it when I watched the episode, and I wanted to talk about it. I didn't really see anyone else talking about it, so maybe that just means I'm going crazy, or maybe I found something new that no one else noticed. So let me know what you thought. Are you familiar with 1984? If you're not, you should probably check it out. It's pretty interesting. People kind of interpret it in different ways. I just think it's a really interesting story. I don't think it's too crazy, like, oh, cautionary tale, the government's going to take over. I don't really see it like that. It's more just an interesting book. I enjoyed reading it when I did. And when I saw this episode, it reminded me of it. So, again, let me know what you think. Are you enjoying The Mandalorian? I'm actually really enjoying it. I know the previous video, I talked about why I wasn't liking it. But as this season is going on, episode 1 I didn't really like, but 2 and 3 have been really good. And I really did enjoy those. So, anyway, there we go. That's the video. So, bye.